The gun was empty. Keisha would piece that together hours later after the adrenaline drained from her system and the ringing in her ears finally stopped. But right now, with steel kissing her jawbone and a stranger's sour breath coating her skin, reality narrowed to a single pinpoint of absolute terror that turned her limbs to lead. And her husband, Min-jun Park, the man who'd barely spoken 10 words to her across 5 months of marriage, the man whose name was always followed by whispered speculation about his true preferences, stood frozen across their palatial Seoul apartment. The expression carved into his features, Jesus. That look erased every thought of the weapon entirely. Release her now. The intruder spoke in Korean, voice dripping venom. Min-jun's reply came in flawless English, each syllable sharp enough to draw blood. You've got 5 seconds to remove your filthy hands from my wife before I demonstrate exactly what kind of monster I can become. The man sneered, digging the barrel deeper into Keisha's throat. The legendary Min-jun Park. Word on the street says you're all smoke, no fire. Everyone claims you're nothing but... He never completed the thought. Keisha couldn't track Min-jun's movement. One heartbeat, he occupied space near the entrance. The next, the intruder was eating marble, the gun spinning across polished stone, and Min-jun's fingers were locked around the man's windpipe with lethal intent. You aimed a weapon at my wife. Each word arrived with increased pressure. You dared to touch what is mine. Convince me why I shouldn't end your pathetic existence right here. Min-jun. Keisha's voice emerged strangled, fear now directed not at the intruder, but at this unrecognizable version of her husband, this predator wearing his face. His gaze snapped to hers, and what burned there stole the oxygen from her lungs, possession, rage, terror, and something else, something primal and desperate that made her knees threaten to buckle. Did he injure you? He maintained his death grip on the intruder, but his tone softened fractionally. Keisha, I need an answer. Tell me if he harmed you in any way. She managed a headshake. Mute. Because what words existed for this? How could she process this transformation when just hours ago he'd walked past her like furniture during breakfast? Distant sirens pierced the silence. Someone had alerted authorities. But Min-jun seemed deaf to everything except her existence, watching her like she represented his entire universe. You're trembling, he observed, finally releasing the gasping intruder. Min-jun crossed to her in 3 powerful strides, and then his hands cradled her face, tilting her head back, examining her with clinical thoroughness, except his hands were shaking. Swear to me he didn't hurt you, swear it. I'm unharmed, Keisha whispered. Min-jun, I'm okay. But you were supposed to remain in Busan for another 48 hours minimum. How did you... I felt something. The admission seemed torn from his core. I was finalizing negotiations for a merger worth billions, and this wave of panic crashed over me that wasn't mine, like invisible hands crushing my ribcage, suffocating me. And I just knew. I knew you were in danger. His forehead pressed against hers, and the vulnerability in that gesture nearly shattered her completely. So I abandoned everything, chartered a helicopter, flew back through a Category 3 storm because I had to. I had to verify you were safe. But why? Keisha's voice fractured. Why would any of this matter to you? This isn't genuine. You married me for public image. You don't even find women attractive. Everyone says everyone is spectacularly wrong. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes, and the intensity burning there obliterated her ability to breathe. Everyone has been wrong about me for years, and I encouraged their misconceptions because it was simpler than facing the truth. But you, his jaw clenched hard, anyone who threatens you threatens everything I am. I don't give a damn what rumors they believe. I don't care what they think they know. Touch what belongs to me, and I'll reduce this world to ashes. The police flooded through the entrance then, rupturing the moment. But as Min-jun shifted to handle the authorities, as Keisha collapsed onto the pristine ivory sofa with someone's blanket draped across her shoulders, one thought dominated her consciousness. Who is this man I married? Because this story doesn't begin with weapons and confessions and helicopter rides through tempests. This story begins 6 months earlier in her family's cramped Lagos apartment, where Keisha's entire future was about to be auctioned to rescue her family from financial ruin. If you want to discover how a Nigerian woman and a Korean billionaire transformed from frigid arrangement to something so intense it defied logic, reason, and every boundary they'd established, stay until the very end, because what unfolds next will devastate you, repair you, and make you believe in impossible love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support keeps these stories coming. Now, let's return to where it all truly began. The curse of being the firstborn daughter was inheriting burdens you never volunteered for. Keisha had absorbed this truth from the moment she could comprehend language, watching her mother perform miracles with nothing, witnessing her father's spine curve under debt's weight, understanding that her aspirations existed only if they served the family collective first. But she'd never imagined it would culminate in this. "His name is Min-jun Park," her father announced, refusing eye contact. "He's Korean-Chinese, 31 years old, CEO of Park Enterprises. Net worth hovering around 1 trillion won. Keisha stood paralyzed in the doorway, her mind rejecting what her ears were processing. "Papa, what are you telling me?" "I'm telling you he's agreed to become your husband." Her father finally raised his gaze, and the shame swimming there hurt worse than any anger. "In exchange, his corporation will eliminate our debts, every single one. You'll relocate to Seoul. You'll never want for anything." The room spun violently. "You're auctioning me off." "Don't be theatrical," her mother cut in sharply. "This represents an opportunity. Do you comprehend how many young women would sacrifice anything for a chance like this?" "Then offer it to them." Keisha's volume climbed despite her attempts at composure. I refuse to marry a complete stranger. I don't want to abandon Nigeria. I have a life here. I have—" "What?" her father interrupted, standing now. "What exactly do you have, Keisha? A degree that's produced 0 opportunities because jobs don't exist. A boyfriend who can't even afford a decent date. Dreams that won't cover your mother's medical expenses or your brother's school fees." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Her father's laugh tasted bitter. "Nothing about this situation is fair. But life isn't fair, and my options have evaporated. The Chinese investors withdrew. The banks have given us 30 days before they seize everything. This house, your brother's education, your mother's treatment, everything. Unless I secure capital, and Mr. Park has offered it in exchange for marriage to you." Keisha felt tears burning but refused their release. "And what does this Min-jun Park gain from this transaction? Why would a billionaire need to purchase a wife from Nigeria?" Silence, the kind that screamed hidden truths. "Mama, why does he require a wife?" Her mother's lips compressed into a razor line. "There's speculation about him in Korea, about his inclinations. He requires a wife to silence the whispers. You require security. It's an equitable arrangement." Understanding crashed through her like Arctic water. "He's gay. You're marrying me to a gay man who needs me as cover." "We don't know that with certainty," her father said quickly. "And even if it's accurate, does it matter? You'll live like royalty, Keisha. He's guaranteed you'll have freedom, your own space, everything you need. Except love. Except choice. Except the future I wanted." Her voice cracked. "I was going to begin my master's program next year. Your master's program requires money we don't possess," her mother stated flatly. "Money Mr. Park is offering. Stop being selfish and think about this family." "Selfish?" Keisha stared at her mother in disbelief. "I'm being selfish." "The contract is already signed," her father said quietly. "The first payment has been transferred. You depart for Seoul in 3 weeks. The floor dissolved beneath her. You signed before consulting me. I did what survival demanded. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. And so will you. Keisha fled the room before they could witness her tears. Seoul assaulted every sense Keisha possessed. The cold attacked through her jacket like fangs. The airport resembled a cathedral constructed from glass and steel and Korean characters she couldn't decipher. And everywhere, people stared at her dark skin like she'd materialized from another dimension. This place is absolutely insane, her friend Naomi whispered beside her. She'd insisted on accompanying Keisha as support, using her savings for the ticket. Are you certain about this? No. Keisha's voice sounded hollow. But what alternative exists? They cleared customs and discovered a man in an expensive suit holding a sign with her name. Miss Keisha, he said with a slight bow, I am Secretary Han. Mr. Park sends his regrets that he could not collect you personally. He's been detained by urgent business. Of course he has. Even meeting his purchased bride ranked below business. The drive to Gangnam felt surreal. Seoul resembled the future. Neon lights bleeding into rain-slicked streets, skyscrapers that seemed to pierce clouds, everything moving with precision and purpose. Beautiful and cold and utterly overwhelming. The building they stopped at looked like it cost more than Keisha's entire Lagos neighborhood. Mr. Park's residence, Secretary Han announced. Penthouse level. Your belongings will be brought up shortly. The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that resembled abstract art. Everything white and chrome and impossibly pristine. It looked like a museum, not a home. Mr. Park will meet you for dinner tonight at 8. The restaurant is Gaon. A car will collect you at 7:30. Please dress formally. Then he left, and Keisha was alone in a golden cage. Keisha! Naomi grabbed her hand. We can still leave. We can discover some other solution. But they couldn't. The money was transferred, the debts were paid, the contract was signed. I'll be fine, Keisha lied. This is just business. I can handle business. She'd been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 51 minutes when he finally appeared. The other diners, wealthy Koreans dripping in designer labels, had been throwing her pitying looks for the past 20 minutes. The waiters hovered with increasing awkwardness. Humiliation burned through Keisha's veins like acid. She was about to leave when the restaurant went silent. Keisha looked up and saw him. Min-jun moved through the space like he owned it, which he probably did. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a black suit that probably cost more than her father's debt. His features were sharp, almost cruel in their perfection. High cheekbones, defined jaw, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. And his eyes, dark, intense, calculating, swept the room before landing on her. Keisha's breath caught. The photos hadn't prepared her for this. For him. He reached her table without hurrying, and when he spoke, his English was flawless. Miss Keisha. You're late, she blinked. I'm what? I specified 7:30 arrival. It's now 7:51. Punctuality is a basic courtesy. Fury replaced shock. Keisha stood abruptly. You're 51 minutes late to meet the woman you paid to marry, and you're lecturing me about punctuality. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. I was held up by... I don't care. Keisha grabbed her purse. Tell Secretary Han to book my flight home. Tell my father the deal is off. I'd rather live in poverty than marry someone who can't even show basic respect. She made it 3 steps before his hand caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity through her skin. Wait. Let me go. Please. The words sounded like it cost him. You're right. I was unconscionably rude. Please sit. Let me start again. Keisha should have kept walking, should have followed her instincts, but something in his voice, a crack in that perfect control, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said coldly. Explain why I shouldn't leave. He released her immediately, hands raised slightly. Up close, she could see exhaustion shadowing his eyes, tension in his jaw. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. "I was late because I was in an emergency board meeting," he said finally. "They've been questioning my decision to marry someone they consider unsuitable." "Unsuitable," Keisha repeated flatly. "Because I'm Nigerian. Because I'm black. Because you're not what they expected. Because this marriage threatens their carefully constructed narrative about who I should be." He paused. "I criticized your timing because I'm terrible at personal interactions and I defaulted to business mode. It was inappropriate. I apologize." "You're not good at apologies." "No, I'm not good at most human interactions, which is why I need this arrangement." His expression remained neutral, but his hands clenched briefly. "The rumors about me are destroying business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions my judgment. I'm exhausted from defending myself." "What's the truth?" Keisha asked quietly. "Does it matter?" He leaned back, studying her. "You're here because your family needed money. I'm here because I need respectability. This is transactional. Pretending otherwise is inefficient." The word should have hurt. Instead, Keisha felt something else. Recognition. Here was someone as trapped as she was. "Fine," she said. "Then let me be clear about my terms. I'll play the perfect wife in public. I'll smile for cameras, learn Korean etiquette, wear the right clothes. But in private, you treat me with respect. You show up when you say you will. You treat me like a human being, not a problem you paid to solve. Can you do that?" Something shifted in his expression. "Yes, I can do that." "Then we have a deal, Mr. Park." "Min-jun," he corrected. "If we're going to be married, use my name." Min-jun. The name felt strange in her mouth. Foreign. "And you can call me Keisha." Keisha. The way he said it, carefully like he was learning its shape, made something flutter in her chest. After they ordered, Min-jun said, "I know you have a degree in business administration from the University of Lagos. I know you speak English, Yoruba, and Igbo. I know you wanted to pursue an MBA before your family situation changed. I know your favorite food is jollof rice, which we won't find authentic versions of here, but I've located a West African restaurant in Itaewon that comes close." Keisha didn't know whether to be impressed or disturbed. "You researched me." "I research everything. It's how I've built my company." "Well, you missed one thing," Keisha said. "My dreams aren't dead, just delayed. I'll play your wife, Min-jun, but I won't lose myself. And when this arrangement ends, when you don't need me anymore, I'm getting my life back." "When this ends," he repeated softly. "You're already planning the divorce, aren't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't do anything halfway. If I'm getting married, I'm staying married. Divorce would be worse for my reputation than the rumors." Keisha laughed bitterly. "So I'm trapped forever in a loveless marriage to a man who might not even be attracted to women. What a fairy tale." "Love is for children," Min-jun said flatly. "What we have is better. Clear expectations. No messy emotions to complicate things." Keisha should have been relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. What a lonely way to live. The dinner continued with careful, formal conversation. By the end, they'd established ground rules. Separate bedrooms, minimal physical contact beyond what was required for appearances, weekly dinners to maintain the illusion. It was practical, efficient, everything Min-jun preferred. It was also the loneliest arrangement Keisha had ever agreed to. When he drove her back to the penthouse, Min-jun walked her to the elevator with stiff formality. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. I've hired a planner. You'll have fittings, Korean language lessons, etiquette training, media coaching. It will be intensive. I can handle intensive." "I believe you can," he paused. "Thank you for not running, for giving this a chance despite how terrible I am at being human." Before Keisha could respond, the elevator doors closed, and she rode up to her golden cage thinking, "This is my life now." But what neither of them knew was that loneliness was about to become the least of their problems. Because arranged marriages built on business had a tendency to catch fire when no one was looking, and some fires burned so hot they consumed everything. The wedding was a spectacle. 400 guests, most of whom Keisha had never met. A ceremony that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Flashbulbs from media outlets Min-jun's publicist had carefully selected. Keisha wore a custom gown that cost more than her parents' house and smiled until her face hurt. And through it all, Min-jun stood beside her like a statue, his hand on her waist only when cameras were near, his expression perfect and empty. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely concealed curiosity. The Korean socialites who'd been vying for his attention looked at Keisha with thinly veiled contempt, and Keisha smiled and nodded and played her part while dying inside. "You're doing well," Min-jun murmured during their first dance. His hand on her back was impersonal, mechanical. "The press is eating it up." "I'm so glad I'm performing adequately," Keisha said sweetly, loud enough only for him to hear. His jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant. Isn't it?" She met his eyes. "Isn't that all this is? A performance?" He didn't answer, just held her through the dance with careful distance. And when it ended, he disappeared into conversations with business partners, while Keisha smiled at strangers and wondered how she'd survive this. That night, back at the penthouse, Min-jun walked her to her bedroom door. "You did well today," he said formally. "Get some rest. I have an early meeting." "Min-jun." Keisha stopped him before he could leave. "Can I ask you something?" He turned, guarded. "What? The rumors about you, are they true?" Silence stretched between them. Then, "Would it matter if they were? I want to know what I'm dealing with. I want to know if this—" She gestured between them. "If this will always be nothing." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. "What do you want me to say, Keisha? That I'm going to suddenly fall in love with you? That this arrangement will become a fairy tale? Because I can't promise that. I don't know how to be what you want. I'm not asking you to love me," Keisha said quietly. "I'm just asking if you'll ever see me, really see me. Not as a solution to your problem, but as a person." Min-jun stared at her for a long moment. "I see you," he said finally, his voice rough. "More than you know, but seeing you and knowing what to do about it are two different things." Then he left, and Keisha stood alone in the hallway, her heart pounding with something she couldn't name. The first month of marriage was ice. They maintained separate schedules, ate separate meals, existed in the same space like ghosts who never touched. Min-jun worked constantly, 20-hour days that meant Keisha barely saw him. And when she did, he was polite, distant, every inch the business partner she'd agreed to become. Keisha tried to build a life. She enrolled in Korean language classes, started online courses toward her MBA, explored Seoul with the cautious wonder of someone who knew she didn't belong. And she called home every week, lying to her mother about how happy she was while her father asked questions about Min-jun's business prospects. The loneliness was crushing. "You look miserable," Naomi said during one of their video calls. She'd returned to Lagos after the wedding but checked in regularly. "Keisha, if this is killing you—" "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're trapped in a marriage with a man who treats you like furniture. That's not fine." "It's what I agreed to." Keisha forced a smile. "And it's not so bad. The penthouse is beautiful. Seoul is interesting. I'm learning the language. It's fine." But it wasn't fine. It was slowly suffocating her. The cracks started to show in the second month. Keisha was making breakfast, something small, just for herself, since Min-jun always left before dawn, when he appeared in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "You're up early," Keisha said carefully. "Couldn't sleep." He moved to the coffee maker with mechanical efficiency. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You're not disturbing me. This is your home." "It's your home too," he said, not looking at her. "You don't have to act like a guest." "Don't I?" The words came out sharper than Keisha intended. "Min-jun, I've been here 2 months, and I still don't know where half the things in this kitchen are kept. I have a bedroom I sleep in, And a closet full of clothes someone else picked out. This doesn't feel like my home. It feels like a very expensive hotel. He turned then, something flickering in his expression. What do you want me to do? I don't know. Keisha set down her tea with more force than necessary. Maybe act like I exist. Maybe have a conversation that isn't about schedules or appearances. Maybe acknowledge that this is weird and hard and neither of us knows what we're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Min-jun said coldly. I'm maintaining our arrangement as agreed. Right. The arrangement. Keisha laughed bitterly. God forbid we be actual human beings to each other. She left the kitchen before he could respond, her heart pounding with frustration and something else she didn't want to name. But she felt his eyes on her back as she walked away, felt the weight of something unspoken between them. Things shifted after that morning. Small changes, barely noticeable. Min-jun started coming home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat in careful silence at first, but slowly conversations started to happen. Small things. How was your day? Did you finish your language class? The weather's supposed to be nice this weekend. He asked about her classes, her progress with Korean, whether she'd found the West African restaurant he'd mentioned. It's good, Keisha told him. Not like home, but good. The owner is from Ghana. She asks about you sometimes. Wants to know if the famous Min-jun Park actually exists, or if I made him up. What do you tell her? That I'm still trying to figure that out. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. The small changes accumulated. He started leaving notes when he had to leave early, just practical things when he'd be back, whether she needed anything. But it was something, an acknowledgement that she existed. Keisha started leaving the Korean news on in the morning, knowing he'd watch it over breakfast. Started keeping his preferred coffee stocked. Small gestures that felt absurd but somehow necessary. They were learning each other slowly, carefully, like two people trying to read a language neither of them spoke. And then, 4 months into the marriage, everything changed. Keisha woke in the middle of the night to sounds in the living room. Crashes. A man's voice speaking rapid Korean. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, about to call security when her bedroom door burst open. The man who entered was young, desperate-looking, and holding a gun. Everything after that was a blur. The cold metal against her jaw. Her own voice screaming Min-jun's name. The intruder dragging her out to the living room. And then Min-jun appearing like something out of a nightmare. And the look on his face. Move and she dies. You have 5 seconds to take your hands off my wife. And then chaos. Violence. The intruder on the floor, the gun skittering away, Min-jun's hands on her face checking for injuries, and the fear in his eyes. Raw, desperate, absolutely terrifying in its intensity. I felt it. I was in the middle of negotiating a merger worth billions, and I felt this panic that wasn't mine. And I just knew. I knew something was wrong. He came back for me, Keisha thought numbly. He left $1 billion deal and flew back in a thunderstorm because he felt I was in danger. Why would you care? She whispered. This isn't real. Everyone has been wrong about me for years, Min-jun said, his voice rough. But you're my wife, Keisha, mine, and anyone who threatens you threatens me. The police arrived, took statements, arrested the intruder, apparently a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. Keisha answered questions in a daze, wrapped in a blanket, while Min-jun stood beside her like a sentinel, his hand on her shoulder. When they finally left, when the penthouse was quiet again, Keisha stood in the middle of their wrecked living room and started shaking. Everything that hadn't hit her during the crisis crashed over her now. Keisha? Min-jun was there immediately, pulling her against his chest. You're safe. I've got you. I thought he was going to kill me, she whispered into his shirt. He didn't. You're safe. His arms tightened around her. I won't let anyone hurt you ever. Do you understand me? Keisha pulled back enough to look at him, really look at him, at the fear still shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he was holding her like she might disappear. The rumors, she said quietly. About you. They're not true, are they? Min-jun's expression shuttered. Keisha, are they? He was quiet for a long moment. Then no, they're not true. They never were. Then why? Because it was easier. He released her, stepping back, and she immediately missed his warmth. In my industry, in my position, people make assumptions. And I let them because the truth… He stopped, jaw clenching. What's the truth? The truth is that I'm not good at relationships, at emotional connections, at being what people need. He looked away. The truth is that I watched my parents destroy each other with love, and I swore I'd never let that happen to me. So I built walls. And when people started assuming things about me, I let them because it meant they stopped expecting me to feel things I didn't know how to feel. And us? Keisha's heart was pounding. What are we? I don't know. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly destroyed her. I told myself this was just business, just an arrangement. But then you moved in and you were everywhere. In my kitchen making tea, learning Korean, asking questions about my day. And I didn't know what to do with that. With you. So you avoided me. So I avoided you, he agreed. Because I didn't know how to be around you without… He stopped. Without what? Without wanting more than what we agreed to. The confession hung between them like a living thing. I want more too, Keisha whispered. I didn't think I would. I thought this would stay business. But then you came back tonight. You flew through a thunderstorm because you felt something was wrong. And I can't pretend anymore that this is just an arrangement. Min-jun stared at her. Keisha, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a real husband to you. Then we'll figure it out together. She stepped closer. Because I don't know how to be a real wife either. We can figure it out together. I'll probably mess it up, he said roughly. I'll work too much and forget to communicate and default to business mode when I'm uncomfortable. And I'll probably call you on it and we'll fight. Keisha smiled through tears. And we'll figure it out. Just like that. Just like that. For a long moment they just stood there, staring at each other in the wreckage of their living room. Then Min-jun reached out, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. I'm going to kiss you now, he said quietly. If you don't want… Keisha pulled him down and kissed him first. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. It tasted like coffee and relief and the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jun rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he murmured. I know. I'm probably going to be terrible at this. Probably, Keisha agreed, but you'll try. And so will I. And maybe that's enough. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because this story, this impossible, unexpected, beautiful story, was just beginning. The transformation wasn't instant. Min-jun didn't suddenly become perfect. He still worked too much, still struggled with emotional expression, still defaulted to business mode when uncomfortable. But he tried. He started coming home for dinner every night, started asking about Keisha's day, and actually listening to the answers, started leaving little notes. Thought of you during my meeting. Coming home early. That made her smile. Keisha started learning his patterns, the way he got quiet when stressed, the way he'd stand at the window and stare out at Seoul when he was thinking, the way he'd reach for her hand without seeming to realize he was doing it. They had their first real fight 3 weeks after the break-in. Something stupid about Min-jun cancelling plans to take an emergency call. Keisha accused him of reverting to old patterns. He accused her of being unreasonable. They both said things they didn't mean. And then, Min-jun did something that shocked her. I'm sorry, he said, finding her in the bedroom where she'd retreated. I prioritized work over you again, and that's not fair when I promised to try. I overreacted, Keisha admitted. I know your work is important. You're more important. He sat beside her on the bed. I'm still learning that, but I mean it, Keisha. You're more important than any deal or meeting or merger. I need you to be patient with me while I figure out how to show it. I can be patient, Keisha said softly, as long as you keep trying. I'll keep trying, he pulled her into his arms. I promise. The changes accumulated. Min-jun started taking Sundays off, something his assistant said he'd never done. They explored Seoul together, finding hidden restaurants and quiet parks. He held her hand in public now, not for appearances but because he wanted to. At night, they fell asleep in the same bed, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I never thought I could have this, Min-jun murmured one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. This kind of connection. I convinced myself I didn't want it. What change? You, he kissed her forehead. You refused to let me hide. You pushed back when I tried to keep you at distance. You made me want to try. I'm glad I pushed. So am I. Keisha turned in his arms to face him. The rumors are going to be a problem, you know. When people find out this is real, that we're actually together. Let them talk, Min-jun said. I don't care anymore what they think. The only person whose opinion matters is yours. And what's my opinion? I'm hoping, he said, pulling her closer, that you think I'm worth the trouble. Keisha kissed him softly. You're definitely worth the trouble. 7 months into their marriage, Min-jun took Keisha back to Nigeria to meet her family properly, not as the business arrangement he'd purchased, but as the wife he'd fallen in love with. Her father opened the door and stared at them, at how Min-jun's arm was wrapped around Keisha's waist, how she was leaning into him, how they looked at each other. Papa, Keisha said softly, I want you to meet my husband properly this time. Dinner was awkward at first. Her parents clearly didn't know what to make of this new dynamic, but as the evening wore on, as they watched Min-jun help Keisha in the kitchen, laugh at her jokes, look at her like she hung the moon, understanding dawned. You love her, her father said quietly when Keisha stepped out to take a phone call. Actually love her? Yes, Min-jun said simply, more than I thought I could love anyone. I'm sorry, her father said, and there were tears in his eyes. I'm sorry I sold her to you like property. I thought I was saving the family, but I nearly destroyed my daughter's happiness. You didn't destroy anything, Min-jun said. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. I just had to learn how to appreciate it. That night, lying in Keisha's childhood bedroom, she asked, Do you regret it? That we started the way we did? Never. Min-jun pulled her closer. Because every day I get to choose you. Not because of a contract or obligation, but because I want to. Because I love you. And that means everything. Keisha kissed him in the darkness of her childhood room, in the place where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement and thought, this is how love stories are supposed to work. Not perfect from the start, but willing to become perfect together. 1 year into their marriage, Park Enterprises held its annual gala. The entire Seoul elite would be there. The press would be circling. And this time Keisha wasn't nervous. She wore a stunning gown, crimson, Min-jun's favourite colour on her, and stood beside her husband as he greeted guests with confidence she'd earned. You're staring, Keisha murmured as they took their seats for dinner. Can't help it, Min-jun said, not looking away. You're the most beautiful woman here. You're biased. Absolutely. He brought her hand to his lips, and I don't care who knows it. The whispers had long since changed from speculation about his sexuality to fascination with their love story. The cold CEO who'd melted for his arranged bride, the Nigerian woman who'd captured Korea's most eligible bachelor's heart. During his speech, Min-jun did something unexpected. Before I discuss this year's numbers, he said, his eyes finding Keisha in the crowd, I want to say something personal. A year ago, I made the best business decision of my life, but it wasn't until recently that I realized it was also the best personal decision of my life. He extended his hand toward Keisha, and she rose, moving to stand beside him with her heart in her throat. Keisha, he said, still in English so she'd understand every word. You came into my life as a solution to a problem. You became my wife because of contracts and obligations and mutual benefit. But you became my everything because you refused to let me hide. You saw past every wall I built and loved me anyway. You taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined. Tears were streaming down Keisha's face now. So I want everyone here to know, Min-jun continued, his voice rough with emotion, that this woman beside me isn't just my wife in name. She's my partner, my best friend, the person I choose every single day. And I am the luckiest man alive, because she chooses me back. The applause was deafening, but Keisha didn't hear it. She only heard Min-jun whisper, "I love you," as he pulled her into his arms. "I love you too," she whispered back, "even when you're terrible at being human." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh that she'd worked so hard to coax from him, especially then. They kissed in front of Seoul's elite, in front of cameras and gossip columnists, and everyone who'd ever doubted them. And Keisha thought, this is what happens when two people refuse to accept that their story is supposed to be cold. Sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes the arrangement becomes the love story. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to choose each other every single day. If you loved Keisha and Min-jun's journey from cold arrangement to consuming love, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the break-in? The first kiss? The gala speech? Your support keeps these stories coming, and I read every single comment. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story, because love doesn't always start perfectly, but it's always worth fighting for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.